Welcome to Akhand Vidyashram, the first institute of impeccable wisdom. Let's discuss what the human cell, the divine design of human cell, which is very, very vital for all the human beings. I have been talking of the second series as a spiritual science, and let's understand the applied part of spiritual science with respect to Devyang, Devyarex and Devyang sequence. Ganit Vidya is a divine mathematics which I am very concerned about it. I do believe only mathematics can give you conclusive answers with perfection integrated in completely. Everything else will not be complete. Now, from divine mathematics, we have come to realize that 0 is the first one to start with and leading to 1 and then to 7. 0, 1, 7 is something which is very, very clear. In this particular picture I have shown right on top the brain is made of 7 parts, not of the 6 part which everybody talks about it. Now I have shown the 7 layers of neocortex, not 6, and also talked about 7 components of the nervous system which contains sensory organs, sensory tracts. Posterior lobes are completely sensory in nature. Then central you have autonomic nervous system and evaluation, and then you have motor planning, descending motor tracts, and this is how sensations from the backside go up, get integrated, evaluated, and all the motor component is front, and that's how the whole thing is designed. Now I have also been saying there are only 6 chakras, not 7 chakras, but in this picture I have shown the 7th one as a turiya, and that is what makes me realize that I can experience the external world also without going inside or after going inside as such. Kundalini can move from Mooladhara to Sahasrara and beyond external depending upon pranayam or breathing techniques. Now I am coming to the 7th part of the integrated system. I have shown it's also 7 part, not 6 part, and added the pacemakers of the heart, digestive system and uterus as the something additional which are missed by everybody else, which should be a part of integrated system. I have already spoken about it. Now come to the human cell and the body as such. And I make one thing very, very clear. A human cell is a bunch of atoms, elements, molecules and compounds. This is the chemistry part. And once this chemistry of atom, element, molecule, compounds is understood, then only can go to the formation of the cells. Elementary chemistry starting from hydrogen to carbon to hydrogen to oxygen to nitrogen to sodium, potassium, chloride and other iodine, etc. They play a very important role. We have already discussed. We are going to discuss more as we move on. Then the second thing which comes to my mind, there are 100 trillion human cells in the human body, and these cells form tissues and tissues form organs, and there are 10 organ systems, and both cells are structure and functional units which make the human being the great. That's it. Now coming to under the compound microscope, as a medical doctor, as a thing I know, human cell is made of trinity, 3 parts only. I can see only 3 things: the cell membrane, which is made of 7 parts, cytoplasm, 7 organelles, and nucleus also 7. 7 plus 7 and 7 is the 21 parts of the human cell as such. 3 into 7 is 21. Now I am talking about the human cell under the image of electron microscope, highly qualified enlargement. Only then you can see 7 parts each as I have shown. So as a result, 21 parts of the human cell is what is the point. That is Brahma-Ank's beginning point, or Shivank as the last part. Now we are going to see the human cell has got 7 parts in the cell membrane. First thing, as you can see in this picture, there are lipid two layers of the cell membrane. You can see up and down, and they are the two layers, and these layers are very, very unique. Second, hydrophilic polar head of phosphoric acid. Outside you can see cytoplasm cell membrane was made of phosphoric acid, which loves water. Then inside you have a fatty acid layer which is hydrophobic, that makes the structure very, very unique. Then inside you have cholesterol layer of cell membrane, sugar side chains of cell membrane, integrated intrinsic protein long chain, and peripheral instinctive protein. So you have glucose, carbohydrates, you have proteins, you have lipids or fatty acids. All the three are very, very component. But this is a cell membrane which has to be understood is a protection for each cell. As I am protected from the external world with my skin and of course other structures, each cell is protected by the cell membrane. So what is outside does not go inside, which is water in nature. But lipid soluble things can easily go because you have lipids in the center. Because that is the kind of knowledge which I want every medical student to have it very, very clear. So 7 layers, why they are designed, how they are designed is very clearly in this particular picture as such. Once that is understood, we can move on to the next stage much more clearly. Now comes the question of why there is a cell membrane and division. In this picture you can see extracellular fluid outside which gets all the blood supply from the heart. Blood carries all the things like water, nutrient, electrolytes and other things which are required for the cell's homeostasis. All are corrected from the digestive system through the 7th layer of digestion, which is an intrinsic factor as such. And this, what we take from outside, is digested for the requirement of the body. And I make one thing very, very clear, water content has to be 61.803% and protein, carbohydrates and fats should be another 38.13. This is where again Divyang comes to play. When it comes to the question of nutrients, you have carbohydrate, you have proteins, you have fatty acids. Then it comes to electrolytes. One thing I am very, very clear, three things are very, very important. One is the sodium, which is extracellular, and potassium, which is intracellular, and chloride content. But beside that, you have another 10 elements which play a very important role in the process, which include iodine also in the process. You are going to see more and more as we move on to the stage. And there are other things like vitamins, minerals and other things which play a very important role in enzyme formation, hormone formation and other things. All these are carried from the digestive system or the body from this to the heart, and then heart pumps out all that to this and is carried in the blood stream as such. So blood stream should have adequate amount of water to maintain the blood pressure, very clear, and also the concentration of everything according to Divyang, you'll have no problem whatsoever. So you are seeing outside, but here I am making it very clear, water and water soluble things cannot go inside. It is cut up with cell membrane as such because it's lipid in there, lipid bilayer. Only fat soluble things can go inside. Intracellular you have potassium and chloride as such, and maybe other things which we'll talk more in detail as you go to the chemistry part. But fundamentally you have to remember this is this. Lipophilic elements like oxygen etc., lipids can easily pass through because the soluble with are in concentration very likely with lipid bilayer. As I told you, lipid bilayer is made of phosphoric acid and outside you can see in the concentration out, and they are the one which can have love for water. Inside, love for water is not there. Inside, you have love for water again. Both the layers have phosphoric acid, which is hydrophilic, scent hydrophobic. Once this is understood, then we can move on to the next stage much more clearly why cell membrane is a protection for cells. Each cell can structure as a functional unit to make the things which are required for the body. Human body is the best chemical factory. Whatever is required, got from inside, can be manufactured inside the body and moved on. And that makes human being or all the animals unique to take care of their conditions within themselves. They are a fantastic chemistry laboratory. Then come to the second inside, cytoplasm. There are 7 organelles which are very, very important, and once they are understood, only then they can function very well inside to produce all what is required for the human body. There are different things required. We don't get as things from outside. What is required for the requirement of different 100 trillion cells performing different functions is produced inside the cytoplasm with the 7 organelles. First thing which comes to my mind is a mitochondria, which is energy ATP producing thing. It produces ATP, adenosine triphosphate, and that energy is produced only in mitochondria, and that's it. Then you have rough endoplasmic reticulum, which is connected with nucleus, and it produces protein elements. Then smooth reticular elements, and then you have Golgi apparatus, then you have lysosome, then you have ribosome, and then you have centrosome. There are 2 fused ones, is something which is part of thing. But centrosome is very close to the nucleus. It can be called a center of the nucleus or outside. It can be either way. It is associated both. Now we are going to see human cell mitochondria. This is a structure. As I have written very clear, E comes from E. coli, is a remnant of thing, and it has got mRNA as such, which makes it unique. And then it can produce adenosine, and secondary transport system is required to have adenosine triphosphate to send things from outside to the inside the cell through the cell membrane very clearly. ATP plays a very important role, and that is produced inside. It helps in sodium and to come inside and potassium to go outside is very, very clear. Then comes the endoplasmic reticulum. I am going to talk rough. Endoplasmic reticulum is responsible for synthesis of proteins. Now comes proteins. It's a system also includes post-translational modification following sorting, etc. are the processes which endoplasmic take place. So here it is close to nucleus and it is for protein synthesis. This is where DNA comes to play a role. DNA plays a role how to convert amino acids into the different proteins required for the whole body is done by rough endoplasmic reticulum itself. Then you have another reticulum, is called smooth endoplasmic. It is responsible for synthesis of lipid. First is the proteins from carbohydrate, then lipid from carbohydrate, and that can produce cholesterol, which is absolutely essential as such, and along with the phospholipids, which is responsible, and that is required for steroids and many things which make the human body a perfectly healthy, wealthy, wise and happy thing. And these 2 things which make cytoplasm very, very comprehensive in formation of required proteins and required lipids or cholesterol, etc. Then come to the Golgi apparatus. Second thing in next line, it transports the molecules synthesized by the rough endoplasmic reticulum. It fuses the membrane and sorts out for destination. Molecules undergo remodeling and modification in the cistern. You can see the picture. The molecules are selected out from the cell to be used later by another organelle. And this is the Golgi apparatus plays very important role in transportation, sorting out and making it specific to the requirement of different things. I think this is further stage of development in biochemistry. Then come to lysosomes, larger organelles with membrane. You can see the picture. They synthesize hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide is H2O2 and is required for breakdown. Lysis inside the cell can take because of lysosome, and they breaks, and that is what keeps us very healthy inside. Hydrochloric acid, hydrogen peroxide H2O2 is required to keep the cells healthy. Then comes the ribosomes. It's a non-membrane organelle. First was organelle, this is non-organelle. And small units and large units, they synthesize amino acids and proteins. This is a structured part of DNA's role to form acid. And both energy molecules like ATP and other things are produced in this process in ribosomes. Lysosome to break it down, ribosome to protune the amino acids and proteins for further development as required in the body. Is done very well in the cell. Now I am coming to the centrosome or centriole, and this picture you can see very clear. Centrosome is made of two centrioles put together as a unit, and this picture you can see on the right side is very clear picture with 9 things, and is exactly like what you call Gyan Yoga to Vigyan to Pragyan. Pragyan chakra has got the same structure as you can see right on top of both the sides. Is exactly like what it is, and that makes it unique. And centrosome as such, as centrioles as such, are very important for procreation. This is what I would say higher levels of development for the future generation. Now, as I've told you, there are two closely held segments in the centrosome as shown in the right picture. During the first stage of creation, these two segments separate and become one into two centrioles. The two centrioles go to the opposite side of the cell. They are held together by mitochondria as well. There is another centriole and a daughter centriole. Only one centriole is carried. It regenerates and divides the cell. It's essential for multiplication of cells. Reproduction, this is absolutely essential. This is something which I want everybody. It is not the nucleus alone which is important. Nucleus has the DNA structure required for the development is further, no doubt. But real division takes place because of centrioles and from centrosome. And once that is understood, we can move on to the next stage much more efficiently. Now come to the question of nucleus cell. In this particular picture, you can see a nucleus in the center, and you can see the centriole in the lower picture very clearly, closely held together the cell membrane of the nucleus itself. And that is what I meant when I say centrosome could be part of the cytoplasm as well as the nucleus, because they work in complementary with each other. The first precation functions are primarily depending. Other structures of the human cell are very clear, like your cell membrane, protoplasm, chromosomes, creatine material. All these pictures are very clearly given there. Now, as you can see, the lower picture, you say endoplasmic reticulum is also very close to the nucleus, as is centriole. Once this is understood, I think things are very clear. You can see the pores also very clear. Once this picture is very clear, then you understand the role of the nucleus is like a brain stem. It is responsible for producing what is essential. It keeps the genetic structure close, it multiplies, and what we are, and it also had D-haploids, both DNA, RNA, and other things also within that, and that makes the unique person to evolve over a period one by one to much higher levels of concentration. Now they come to the question, I am making something very clear. There are 200 types of cells. Now for the next stage I am going to we have the reproducing living cells. One thing which I am making it very clear, living cells should reproduce or multiply. There are 200 types of different cells, is very clear. They function, they give a different function altogether, no doubt. They can produce different things, this one. But living cells can reproduce, whereas non-living cells do not do. So what is the difference of living cells which can reproduce and functional cells which cannot reproduce? Now the next stage comes is non-producing neuron cells. They have very good functional work. They are synthesized or produced in the very beginning. The number does not change, it does not increase or reduce. Destruction could reduce it, but it cannot increase because they cannot multiply. That is one thing. But they live for years and years and together till we die. That is something very unique. But in the neuron cells, you can find the nucleus very clear. What is missing in that is the centriole and centrosome. Centriole and centrosomes are not there. As a result, the process does not come. Although all the requirement of the nucleus are there because they are required for normal function of the cells for years together. So that is point which I want everybody to understand. Neuron cells are produced in the beginning and they remain till the end. All the requirement can be done by the nucleus itself, but centrosome is missing so that it does not reproduce. That's clear. Whereas red blood cells, to start with, they are like living cells. They go through the 10 stages, and once they formed cells, it has no nucleus, it has no centrosome, it has no nucleus because all that which is the cell membrane's core part, which is 38.1966% of the solid matter and 61.803 was the water content. This 38 point is replaced by hemoglobin, which is 35%. Once we understand that whole concept of nucleus missing or mitochondria missing or the organelles missing is to make a place for 35% hemoglobin, which is required for formation of red blood cells, hemoglobin, oxygen carrying capacity and deoxygen thing. Without that we cannot survive. This is something which is very important because we need oxygen for functions. Without oxygen we cannot. And oxygen is taken from the external world through hemoglobin of the red blood cells, and that is the reason they are not reproducing, but they live only for 120 days and the formation takes for 21 days. Now this is where I am bringing again why Divyank has helped me to understand, because red blood cell to start with is 21 microns to 22, 10 stages to come to 7, and everything 21 days. Everything divine mathematics is applied very beautifully in both neuron as well as that. Now I am coming to the further part. You have excitable cells which can produce action potential. Excitable cells are the two major kinds. You have muscles and you have neuron cells. Both can produce excitable action, and this again action potential is exactly what Divyanki is all about. You are going to see that also in nerve action potential and maybe muscle action potential, and also whole process of Nernst equation. Then you have non-excitable local potential cells like you have in endocrine glands. They produce only local thing. It does not go to threshold value, and once does not go to threshold value, it remains below the 55. When they remain below the 55, they can only produce a local potential because their stimulus is not strong enough to reach that level. In that, concentration of sodium does not enter to the extent what happens in excitable cells, and you are going to see that also as we move on. I think having laid foundation in the human cells for some things which you are going to see in the process to become perfectly healthy, wealthy, wise and happy. I think from this center concentration of human cell with all things that I said is more than enough to start, because and this is again 21 parts of cell membrane. This first beginning part is sent in each cell. It is a much little replica of the universal consciousness of Divyak. 22 by 21. Here I have made it a 21 part. 22 part will go later when we go for reproduction as well. Now coming to this picture, I am not going to talk much. I think it's enough for the day. Once this is understood, we can build on to the next step by step as we go on. Thank you very much.